Today we're at a very different type of museum to the ones we often visit. We're at Charmouth Heritage Coast Centre. It's a free museum. You could even say it's not a museum, it's a visitor centre. Though I would say it's a very interesting museum. When you come in, there's a wonderful cabinet of brand new fossils found by people on the beach next to this visitor centre. And unfortunately you can't film it, but it's very impressive how beautiful they are. And then there's a good explanation of different types of fossils that you can find here, from ammonites and brachiopods, and if you're really lucky, something a little bit larger. There's some very good explanations of the geological timescale here, and it's sitting in an old cement factory right on the shore next to Charmouth Beach, and the finds here come from Charmouth Beach. So if you're really lucky, you could find an ichthyosaur like this. Well, we're going to go and have a little look and test this out. I'm going to give you a clue right now: we didn't find an ichthyosaur. But there's some beautiful examples of skillfully and lovingly curated pieces that they actually put how many hours were spent preparing this for display, and most of them are in the hundreds of hours. It's a fascinating collection of very interesting fossils, and as you maybe tell seeing my coat there, we were on the beach before this and we did find some fossils. Here there's a excellent display, a three-dimensional explanation of Charmouth Beach, where you have these boulder arcs, and I would say don't step in the boulder arcs because the boulder arcs are shale turned to liquid mud. And then you have the cliffs. You want to stay clear of the cliff itself. There's a good geological diagram of what you're actually seeing here, and explanations of the different layers of sediment and what period they're actually from, which era you could say. And then this lovely map of the Jurassic Coast. You may have seen our video a few months ago where we went to Lyme Regis, just a couple of bays along from here, and the whole stretch really from here, or from Lyme Regis along to where Corfe Castle is, that whole stretch is really good for finding fossils, but particularly this stretch at Charmouth and Lyme Regis. And as you can see, there's an overwhelming amount of information here. You really need to take quite a while for what is a one-room museum. And all the way around the walls, it's dense with these display cabinets. You can see some of the modern day items you find here, from the rope cast up on the beach to the mermaid's purse there, different types of shell you can easily find. And what I was looking for, if you see that rib, that's actually a rib from a dinosaur, but we didn't find one of those. Along with an explanation of all the items of everything from detritus to fossils that you can find here. Here, beautiful ripple mark fossil. That's ripple marks of a beach millions of years ago, petrified into stone. And then a cuttlefish on my left, a modern day cuttlefish shell that you'll find washed up on a beach. Very good for cleaning stones. You rub it against a stone and it cleans the muck off it. Next to that is a fossilized cuttlefish from millions of years ago. Here, this brittle star, and a whole series of really beautiful finds here, which are really hard to do justice to, but very high quality. On the wall there's some information about Mary Anning, who's particularly famous, but also other people involved with the early growth of paleontology. Here, piece of burnt wood found in 2020, cryonoids, all fossilised. And I must admit, I was looking for a cryonoid. Shark tooth, different plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs that were found here. Fossilised and preserved in such good examples. Take this ichthyosaur skull where you can see each of the individual razor blade teeth and even the details of the eye socket, or these wonderfully prepared fossils. Really beautiful. You can see how they've taken away all of the stone bit by bit by bit over hundreds of hours, and then presumably varnish them to bring out the natural colour of the fossil. But an interesting collection of different fish, shellfish. The one at the back is actually a shellfish, and then the ammonites. Obviously there's so many different types of ammonite, we just look at them and think that's an ammonite, but they're all different species. The next cabinet has a range of dozens of different species all explained. Along with these cabinets here, you open up the cabinets, ichthyosaur skull at the bottom, explanations of fossil collecting and different things you see next to the ammonites that you might just dismiss as an impurity, but it's actually something a little bit more. You've got there horse bone from millions of years ago, trilobites, ichthyosaur. Look at this wonderful ichthyosaur. I must admit, I looked at a few stones that size, but I didn't chip any open. As well as finding fossils, there's very good explanation of how the fossils are prepared. And look at this wonderful piece. You come here hoping to find a piece like this, but you find something enjoyable. It's very easy to find fossils here. Just don't set your expectation, but it's going to look like this wonderful ammonite pavement, or that you're going to find a plesiosaur. You look at this wonderful ichthyosaur skull. Cabinets full of ichthyosaurs. And each one you can see there's a lot of text explaining the species, the type of animal, how it was prepared, how it was found, what to expect when you go out on the beach, because you should probably come here before you go to Charmouth Beach. And although it's a small museum, as we make our way out of the visitor centre, I definitely recommend coming. It's free of charge and it's an excellent introduction to the beach itself, because part of the experience of coming here is heading out onto the beach, walking along the cliffs and looking for fossils. You may have seen more examples of dinosaurs in our videos of the Natural History Museum, the first one, or the Natural History Museums in Cambridge or Oxford, but here you get to live it. You get to go and dig and break stones open and sift the sea, and you will find something. Within 2 minutes of leaving the visitor centre, crossing the car park, walking over the bridge, the beach begins, and you walk along the bottom of these cliffs, and at first they're impressive muddy hills cut in half, but as you stroll along you start to realise they're a dynamic living organism. You see these piles here, these are the boulder falls that they talked about inside the museum, and the stones inside it. This is quite dangerous, these ones, because the shale has been liquidized into a very gloopy, sticky mud that you easily sink into. But even here you can see the layers, the stratification of the hillside, and all these little pebbles and stones thrown amongst the mud. And each one of the stones in this mud is a potential source of fossils. But a little bit further along the beach, where there's less water running through, I would say I came after a rainfall, and it's a good time to come when there's been some slumps and cliff falls. And another reason not to get too close to the walls, I did see some people climbing up, and I would definitely not recommend trying to climb up here. Even on the shale patches, it's dangerous, it's tricky, and actually the stones that have come out, or in fact, as we'll see in a bit, even better, the stones that have been washed by the sea, are a much safer option. You can see here the cliffside becomes a bit cleaner and easier to interpret, but the shale beds are embedded in there. It's good if you're going to try and break some of these open, it's good to have a geologist's hammer. I actually just bought a normal house hammer and a pretty sturdy chisel, and that more than did the job for most. Although when you slam a hammer against shale, if the shale's very wet, it deforms the shale rather than splitting it, because you've got these sedimentary levels, and what you're really trying to do is break it on a weakness spot so it opens as a plate, and embedded in that plate is hopefully a fossil. And from the shore you can see that land rising up in the distance. That's Portland, the Isle of Portland that Portland stone comes from. Just after that, to the left, is where Weymouth is, and Abbotsbury would be just after that sort of sandy beach that you can see in the distance there. And we'll be going there in a few weeks' time, so do check that out, because it's a fascinating piece of history, nothing to do with fossils, I'm afraid. Now, having had limited success looking along the cliffs, decided to try walking back along the foreshore, because as you can see there's large crowds walking on the foreshore, not just up by the cliffs, and actually had a lot more success here, because impressive as these cliffs are, and they're beautiful to look at just from a geological point of view, you can see the individual stratas, the years of deposition, the different types of stone that are formed in the cliff in a way that you often can't see in many cliff faces. But if you look down at your feet, in amongst the waves, there's all these different pebbles, and some have come from the cliffs and some have been swept up here in storms. But if you look really closely, you will find something eventually. So let's go and have a little look. You have to walk along slowly, methodically, looking down at the stones on the beach, and also look for the waves sweeping out. And here is not an ammonite, but you have to keep your eye out for something with a different shape, and here is one straight away, and I swear this wasn't one I made earlier, a fragment of an ammonite. So yes, doesn't look as good as the ones in the museum, but we're not finished yet. It's very careful, slow work, weaving your way along the beach, and look for when the waves crash in. Maybe that's a slightly dramatic word for this rather quiet beach. But as they come back out, they disturb the surface, and you see amongst the foam these little rocks drifting, and some of them have been beautifully cleaned by the sea, and we did find one really lovely example. And at the end, in a minute, I'm going to show you what I did find on the beach. There's a lot of fascinating stones here. If you're into geology, there's quite a bit of sea glass, polished quartz, and different types of mineral here. But I'm looking very carefully, trying to find that perfect find. Now, whether you find anything or not, it's all fun. It's beautiful scenery, lovely beach, full of people, not sunbathing, but furiously searching for fossils. And as promised, here's a selection of the fossils that I found in about an hour and a half on the beach. So nothing stunning, but I was certainly happy. So now I'm back home with my carrier bag, and I've cleaned about half of them. So first off is what I was hoping was a bone, but I'm afraid it's just a nodule of flint. And yeah, not as impressive as I hoped. But second up, look at this rough side, nothing interesting at all. And then you see the shell ridges on this side. And here, yes, it's faint, but you can see the chambers in the shell of what appears to be something like an ammonite. Then we have this. When I plucked it out of the sea, it looked almost like a little jewel. Unfortunately, when it's dried out, it's just boring quartz, but it did look lovely when wet. Unfortunately, it needs to have quite a bit of seawater on it to really get it back. A fascinating little slab of stone, almost looks like it's been professionally polished. You wouldn't think that had been plucked out of the sea. And here, an ammonite. Now we're into some interesting, obviously ammonite fossils. Bit less clear on that side, especially it's out of focus, but you can clearly see the ridges of the shell chamber, and really is a pleasant fossil, nothing too amazing. Here you can see a piece of shell chamber from an ammonite, and I'm trying to get it focused because there's also some pyrite on there. I'm into another fragment of ammonite, quite a large example, very shiny, the deposit it's made from. But here's another ammonite, if I get the distance right on that. A fragment of an ammonite. If anything, it may be the impression of an ammonite. Some of them, you get an impression on one sheet of shale and the actual one on the other side, and sometimes it kind of comes out like two impressions. Here, nothing actually interesting on the stone, but if you can see that glitter, all that glitters isn't gold, that's iron pyrites. And here, now I was thinking the body of a belemnite. They were like a squid-like creature with a long, sharp, bullet-shaped shell. And here's possibly one of the bullet-shaped shells. And last, but definitely not least, this gorgeous little ammonite. Look at the detail on it. Almost looks like it's been cast with metal. It's just plucked from the seashore. Almost looks like a piece of jewellery with a hole drilled in it, but I plucked it from the sea. I'm pretty sure it is an ammonite, and you can see some, well, a bit too close to the camera there, but if I zoom out slightly and focus in, there is some idea that you can see some stony deposits around it, but a beautiful piece to find. So I hope you enjoyed our visit to the Charmouth Coast Heritage Centre. It's free of charge. Do try and make a donation. Very helpful people, lovely little collection, and a great start to a morning, an afternoon or a day of wandering along Charmouth Beach finding some history. So please do like and subscribe, and we'll be back next Monday with another museum tour, and it really is a very different museum and one of my favourites.